feel like sometimes people can be a little awkward around the idea of ROI.
I didn't know who they were. I didn't know the people behind it. I didn't understand why it would be valuable to even trust them in the first place. And so when we talk about this ROI of video,
whether it's Gary Vee, Alex Hermosi, Dave Ramsey, whoever it is, it's like, well, they have a team.
What we don't love is this idea of faceless corporations, because faceless corporations, and I don't like even the word corporation, like faceless companies. Faceless companies. Corporations sound like I'm like an anarchist or something. I'm not sure what that means, but like,
what are the things you do to grow your brand? Join me as we take a look at how the best in the business build authority and create true fans through video podcasting. I'm Josh Lewis, and this is Grow Your Podcast, produced by the Cincinnati Podcast Studio. All right, so what is the ROI of video podcasting?
That's a good question.
Right? It's a question we get all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we also get it, like people are thinking it, even if they don't verbally say it out loud.
Mm-hmm.
And kind of what we want to do with this conversation is just kind of lean into it. I feel like sometimes people can be a little awkward around the idea of ROI. And like one of our values is to be trustworthy, right? To build trust. And so we just want to like share with you our thoughts on why we think video podcasting is super valuable and how to think about it in the way that maybe is a little different. Okay. So, you know, we don't want to throw away money, right? That's a huge thing. Like,
I mean, if you're that person, please talk to us.
Right. Yeah. I mean, you can always talk to us and that's totally fine. But you know, thinking through what is something worth, right? I'm going to give a little analogy. So back when I worked at Epifio, I remember I was actually having an incredibly hard time with sales. And my boss at the time, Lucas Cole, shout out, he was like, Josh, how much is $1 worth? I'm like, $1's worth $1. He's like, nobody knows what $1's worth. And he kind of like led me through this whole explanation of like, you would pay $1 for this, but not for this. And kind of like going through these different scenarios. And essentially the idea is value is subjective, is completely subjective. And so what $1 is worth to somebody isn't objective because it depends on what is that dollar going to be used for.
I think that's an interesting analogy because if you think about the different size of businesses in Cincinnati, a $1,000 contract to a small business is going to be massive.
Right.
$1,000 contract to a P&G doesn't even require a sign off.
Right.
So it's an interesting perspective. I like that. That's a really good point there.
Yeah. So it just really is like, okay, let's think about the value of something. And okay, so how does somebody, and we've talked about this a lot, so I'm totally prepping Brian on something we've talked about. But like essentially, like what is the thing that is going to, that organizations and people need in order for somebody to buy from them?
Well, I mean, I think that's a couple of things. It needs to solve a problem is the main thing.
Yep. Exactly.
They need to be at a place where the pain is greater than the cost it may cost them to be able to be a part of a service or something like that.
So it solves a problem. And then ultimately, the thing is, I have to trust you.
Yes.
To be able to solve that problem. Like, because there may be a bunch of people who solve that problem. Like the amount of like consultants and realtors and business coaches and like all these different things. Like we know so many of them. We know so many video production companies. Like, so what is it that is going to make somebody work with you is trust.
I think an easy example of this that probably people have run into is like if you spent any time on the internet back in like the early to mid 2000s, there were a lot of websites that were on the internet that you're just like, you click onto it and instantly you're like, I don't trust this
Yes.
spot
Yes.
at all.
Right.
Like it just feels like someone threw up something on a website. I'm not going to be putting my credit card information into that page. Like it doesn't make any sense. A funny example of this is growing up in Campbell County, Kentucky.
Yeah.
There was this building that I would drive by every single day when I was commuting to work. And I don't even remember what it was. Like, but I remember the building, and I remember I could see through the glass. There was no signage outside, no nothing. Through the glass, as I drove by, I saw like 3 numbers. It was like an acronym for their name or whatever. And I drive by that every day. I'd see cars outside, but I was like, what the heck is going on with this place? Eventually, I Google it. I look up their website. And as soon as I saw their website, it literally looked like those bad 2000s action movies where they're like, I'm going to set up a site that's going to pretend to be something else. And it's like, and it was like some sort of a like inmate phone system thing. And I'm like, you are a scam company if I've ever heard of it. Whoa. This looks like I would never trust anything that you guys say.
Wow.
And it's amazing how many brands I see in Cincinnati and even abroad that like, they don't get the idea that the moment somebody interacts with something that you create, some sort of marketing content, some sort of website, video content, be it your podcast, whatever, if they can't instantly tell that they can trust you, they're going to move on. Like the tolerance for that time to be able to understand if they trust you or not is so short. I can't put a number on it, but I would say I knew if I could trust somebody usually within the first 20 seconds.
Yes. It's a gut check. And I've actually heard some things recently about like, because of how we are interacting with video, with websites, with different social media platforms, our kind of gut check time is quicker and quicker. Like people have just a few seconds to make an impression, right? And ultimately, like, okay, so we're talking about trust, we're talking about these things because we personally, it's so funny. I feel like this was a natural thing for us to talk about at some point. As much as we love videos, as much as we love conversations, like brand is kind of like the essence of an organization, right? If we think about brand as like your character, your reputation, right? Like this is what people think about you when you're not in the room, right? This is how they feel about you. That's why that is incredibly valuable. That is very important, right? And so kind of like what you were saying, like how you show up online really, really matters.
It really, really matters. And like our friend Chandler, he loves to talk about the idea, don't bankrupt the brand, don't bankrupt the business.
Yes.
So like what he loves to talk about when he talks about marketing is this idea that you need to be willing to try anything you can to get people to trust you. And he has a whole formula for it, and I'm not going to steal it from him. You just got to go watch some of his content. It's fantastic.
Chandler Lyles.
With High Beam Marketing. He's fantastic.
Just Google him.
Yes, and the thing that is so interesting there is like you need to be able to try different things often to be able to understand how to get people to trust you. And when we talk about things like ROI, there is a lot of things that have to be tried to be able to get things to work. Like one of the things that I think people get so frustrated with marketing about is that there are a bajillion companies out there that do marketing and that claim that here will be your ROI if you spend X dollars with us. And podcasting doesn't exactly work that way.
Nope.
Because when you're thinking through ROI, you're thinking through, okay, what do I actually really want to get out of this podcast? Because yes, sales is one of them. Obviously. I mean, we spend money so that we can hopefully make more money. Like that's the goal.
That's business.
That's business. But if we don't allow ourselves to say, but I have secondary objectives to this. One of the things we recognize with podcasting is that the ROI on podcasting can be sales and is often sales but it's because people trust you. and because they already know who you are before they decide to make a purchase.
Yes.
So I think it's an interesting example that you have of that, because you had somebody basically convince you to trust them, and you tried to do anything you could to work with these people.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I was the director of communications at my church, and man, it was when I stepped into that role, I was really trying to find anything I could about church communications, because that's just a different world than corporate communications, right? Yeah. And so I was just trying to figure all that out. I stumbled across, very, very intentionally on their part, the Pro Church Tools podcast. And it was all about how to help churches, especially ones that maybe are under-resourced in certain areas, to be able to communicate well using simple tactics, tools, all these different things.
Yeah.
So I consumed that content. Like, they were very practical. The two hosts were super engaging. The quality was really awesome. So visually, it was great to watch. They did a great job on audio when I would listen on audio. And so over time, I realized, oh, wait, these guys, like the main host is the CEO of Nucleus, which happens to be a church website platform, right?
Yeah.
So this podcast was kind of like a marketing effort for Nucleus. However, they cared about their audience so much that they wanted to go a little bit above and beyond. And let's just talk about communications in general. So they're talking about camera equipment. They're talking about how to speak on camera. They're talking about graphic design, like all these different things that don't necessarily have to do with your website. So they were trying to give value there. Well, about a year or so into the role, we needed a new website, and I really wanted to work with them. It was like a no-brainer for me. Like, I'm like, I have to work with these guys. I know their philosophy because they've talked about it a lot. I know the things that they care about and why it works because they've talked about it. They've talked about case studies and what has worked with this church versus this one. And it was just like such a no-brainer, because over time, they showed up consistently, gave me value. And when it was time, like, I was there. But again, it was like a year or so, maybe 2 years of listening to them before I was in the place to buy from them. But like, I was ready.
Well, I think that's an interesting thing, because if you think about it, sales, there's sales and marketing, and everyone likes to say that they're the same thing,
but
right?
They're not.
They're not the same thing. And sales is closing a deal.
Yep.
You take a lead, close a deal.
Yep.
Marketing is creating a relationship.
Yep.
And the thing is like, even our marketing team talks to us about this, where they say, like, there's probably only 5% of people out there who can even be your target person,
right?
Like, whatever your brand is.
Yep.
Now, if you're a large CPG brand, obviously that's different because you can sell to everybody.
Yep.
But like, the majority of organizations and majority of companies don't have a super broad reach.
Yep.
But the thing is that there are going to be people who would be interested in buying from you that can't buy from you right now.
Right.
And so one of the things you have to do is you have to market to them.
Yep.
You have to show up consistently in their feed, consistently in all these places. And eventually, when they come to the point, like, say you're not a body shop.
Yeah.
You follow this guy, he's been posting cool stuff, interesting, that sort of thing. But you don't have a car that's busted.
Right.
So you don't need him
Yep.
at this moment.
Yep.
But you still think he's cool, so you listen to what he talks about, learn from him, that sort of thing. You get in a car accident, who's the first person you're going to think about?
Exactly.
Right? Exactly. Like, when you need a solution to your problem, you have that. So what happened was Pro Church Tools, they did the same thing.
Yes.
They said, hey, we're going to give you all this extra content.
Yep.
Other things that we've learned along the way. They're obviously masters of a bunch of different things. Yep. But websites are their game.
Exactly.
And so what they decided to do is say, hey, we're going to share all this extra knowledge because we're not doing anything in those other spaces. So let's share it. Let's make it valuable to our people.
Yep.
And then the more we interact with people, eventually, when the time comes that they want to buy, then eventually they become a sale.
Yes, exactly. And it feels like the thing that made them very successful was that they cared about their client, their target audience. Like, I feel like that's where you can go from, this is where it goes from, like, you could go into the ditch of manipulation.
Oh yeah.
Or if you're actually caring about people and trying to, and I'm hoping if you're listening to this, that means you actually like care about your audience and your clients. Like that's what you got to do first.
Yeah.
And I think the other piece for them is, consistently trying to just give away the value is, so you care, but you also give away value. Like, because of that, I knew that they were generous. The thing, let me just like spitball some of the things that came to my mind when it came to their character.
Okay.
I thought that they tried things. They have experience in that world because one was a like bivocational pastor. One had been the communications guy at his church, and now he runs this organization, still involved in his church. So they were in it. They were very generous with their time. They cared about, like they actually cared about building a relationship with people, because they would also like answer questions on the podcast, which was super helpful.
Yeah.
I got my question answered several times, which made me even more attracted to this. Right. And so, and being able to talk about things from this is not good, don't do that, but also like coming at it from a like non-judgmental and very understanding place. Like, it was just phenomenal. And it's like, those are some of the things that were rolling around in my mind. So I'm like, if that's the character of these people, I want to work with them.
That makes total sense.
And so I think one of the things that, branding is not your brand is not your logo. It is not the fonts. It is not the colors. It's none of those things. Those things are branding elements. Yep. So branding is like the effort you put in to reflect your character and your reputation, right? Yeah. But your brand, it really is your character and how much can people trust you? What do they say when you're not in the room?
People love to classify as a difference between like a corporate brand and a personal brand.
Yep.
But honestly, they're kind of the same.
I think they're very similar.
Like, because you can have somebody who's in an organization, a big organization that has a corporate brand.
Yep.
But that person also has a personal brand inside of that. And that personal brand affects how the corporate brand
100%
is in massive ways. So they're intertwined, almost the exact same thing.
I agree.
And it's really difficult sometimes to be able to tell them apart.
Yep.
But the thing that I love is, like, as you and I talk about the mission and vision of what we do as podcasters, what we don't love is this idea of faceless corporations.
Right.
Because faceless corporations are, and I don't like even the word corporation, like faceless companies.
Companies. Yeah.
Faceless companies. Corporations sound like I'm like an anarchist or something. I'm not sure what that means. But like for us, the reason I didn't trust that website back in the 2000s was because it was all stock photos and I didn't know the person behind it.
Yep.
And so it's this place that feels fake.
Yes.
That's why I didn't trust that weird thing on the side of that building on the side of the road.
Right.
Because I didn't know who they were. I didn't know the people behind it. I didn't understand why it would be valuable to even trust them in the first place.
Yeah.
And so when we talk about this ROI at video, like, it takes a brand from a faceless company that just has a logo, and then it takes it to a place where they are human beings, and you are doing business with human beings. Even if, like, say the Pro Church Tools podcast, they are talking about, they sometimes talk about Nucleus, not all that often, but they do talk about it. And when you decide to work with them, like you tried to work with them, you may not even have been working with those two guys.
Right.
Like, it's the two guys, right?
Yeah.
Like,
I actually talked with somebody completely different on their team.
But you already trusted them.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so it was their faces, it was their personality, their personal brand
Yep.
that got you to trust the brand of the company.
Yes. Yes. I also think there's an element too where it's like, so I had talked to 2 people from the company, like on video calls and different things, and I had heard the hosts of Pro Church Tools talk about these guys by name. So like you can do that in a smaller company, right?
Yeah.
Which was super fun. It's probably harder to do that the larger you are, but there are things like that where it's like I could even trust the reputation of the people I was talking to because they were mentioned by these other guys. Like, man, I love it when Mitchell does this or whatever, you know? So I think that is so much why we love video podcasting. And I think, you know, video podcasting, this is the other piece that I want to hit on that I talked about earlier, is this is a long game. So I think because if you think about your personal reputation, that is developed over a long period of time, right? Well, your brand is also developed over a long period of time. So video podcasting is a long game. Like you have to be showing up consistently for a while for it to actually kind of take the effect that you really want it to.
Yeah.
There's so many podcasts out there that don't reach the 10 episode
threshold,
number, right?
Yeah.
And no shade on them. Like it's hard work if you're doing it by yourself. That's why, like, I mean, if you think about like all these podcasters that you might listen to, whether it's Gary Vee, Alex Hormozy, Dave Ramsey, whoever it is, it's like, well, they have a team. So that's why they're able to show up the way that they do.
Absolutely.
But you have to do it over time in order for it to work. And so I think
there's no such thing as an overnight success.
There is not. You're right.
Like the people who we see as overnight successes are the people who have put in work for weeks, months, years to eventually become the place that all of a sudden everyone recognizes who they are.
I think I was actually thinking about this a little bit recently because there is a guy, there's a public speaker that I sort of just found out about maybe last year. And I was listening to an interview with him and hearing about like the work he had to do for how long. Like he was talking about 20 years. I'm like, whoa, you've been doing this thing for 20 years. I'm just now hearing about you, but you are the freaking best in the world at this. Like I have the way he describes things, I'm just like blown away. And so I think so often, you know, character matters to us, right?
Big time.
And like, and we've known each other for 25 years. Like there are things that just like, it just matters for that element of trust. And that's why we even like are okay working with each other, right?
Exactly.
Like we've known each other a long time. Makes sense.
Yeah.
With podcasting, you just have to be willing to put in the work to commit to it for a while. This is not, there are ways you can use miniseries, I think very effectively. There's different mediums for video content if you just want to do short stuff for a little bit.
Yeah.
I think this is the best way to show up consistently as a brand move that also makes a lot of marketing content.
Well, I think the other thing, and I want to get to that, makes all the other marketing content, because that's a big deal about ROI when it comes to podcasting. But the other thing is podcasting is a future investment.
Yes.
Like it
That's
is,
a great way of saying
it is compound interest.
Yeah.
And so the more you take the time to do something, the more you build your brand, the more you interact with your fans,
for sure,
the more you actually get to a place where, say, this is a good example. Okay. So think about The Social Network, the movie.
Yeah.
When it talks about Facebook.
Yep.
And the story in The Social Network is for a long time, they're trying to get Mark Zuckerberg to be okay with the idea of putting ads on Facebook.
Right.
Right. And he kept saying, no, it's not cool enough yet. It's not cool enough yet. We're not big enough. If we do it, it'll kill the brand.
Yep.
And so one of the things that he did though is eventually when they finally turned on ads, they made bank because the people already trusted them, and then adding ads into it felt like nothing had really changed all that much.
Yep.
And so I think when I look at it, it was like, okay, say we're talking with an author.
Yeah.
They are writing a book.
Yep.
And they are getting ready to release this book maybe next year.
Yep.
One of the best things they could be doing right now is starting a podcast. So they could get a year of this podcast under their belt. They're talking about writing the book. They can talk through the process of what they're doing, what they're thinking about right now. I'm working on this chapter, but I'm stuck here, or like talking and interviewing other people that may end up in the book.
Yes.
And then eventually when the book launches, they have this whole subgroup of people who have been watching this entire time.
Yeah.
Then when the book actually launches, suddenly
there's a payoff for those listeners.
Massive.
And
for them.
I would also say retroactively, people who are now exposed to their book can also kind of almost like go back to the BTS of what happened before, of like, let's hear these thoughts that you have throughout as you were leading up to the book launch.
Well, because even to continue with the author analogy, you're sitting in this place where a lot of times people who write a book are unknowns.
Yeah.
The only people who know them is their network.
Right.
And so the only way that people like an author can actually build that fan base is to do things consistently over time.
Yep.
And you can't just write a new book every week.
Yep.
Like you can write a blog post maybe if you want to, but blogs are not the space that people are anymore online. Like, except for like, I guess mommy bloggers still exist a lot.
Sure.
But like for us, one of the ways that we recognize the easiest brand building tool that exists is podcasting.
Yep.
Just because it's repeatable,
Yep.
consistent, your audience gets to know the format, they get to know the way that you talk, and then eventually that payoff can happen down the road. It takes time.
Yep.
It really does take time.
Yep.
But there's some shortcuts.
Yep.
There are definitely some shortcuts.
For sure.
We have somebody who comes to the studio who brings in really big names.
Yes.
And so those big names provide some shortcuts.
Exactly.
But when you build it around your own brand, eventually there's a time where the payoff actually happens. Say the author finally launches his book and then he hits bestseller for that day on Amazon.
Yep.
You can then technically write bestseller on Amazon.
Yep.
On the cover.
Right.
So bringing that all back to compound interest, you get the ability to be able to do this over and over and over again. You hone your own skills, hone your own message.
That's a big thing,
which is great. And eventually the right people will find you.
Right.
And you will be able to connect with them.
Yeah.
And then selfishly, I think you get a payout from it eventually.
I agree. Yeah. I love all that. I think there is, if you can focus on answering the question, what is your brand worth? Then that's kind of what I would say the video podcast is worth.
Yeah.
Was your reputation worth? Well, if it's worth investing in, I would say video like I'm just going to give, I was telling you earlier that there's this legal podcast I listened to, and there was one episode where they were talking about how this judge, typically judges will write their dissent, and instead of writing it, he did a video. And the host was like, if I had read the dissent, I probably would have disagreed. Because I watched the video, I was like, oh, I agree with this actually. For the majority of people, it is really helpful to see faces, to see facial expressions, to hear tone. Like those things are so important for communicating. And when we don't have those, we read a lot into things.
Yeah.
And so to be able to like kind of take control of the narrative of your podcast, of the conversation you're trying to influence through a video podcast or something like it, you know, I just think is so valuable.
Well, there's so many different podcasts that exist that are only audio right now that I think would be insanely good video podcasts.
Well, I think the other piece too is the reason why we push video podcasts is for some of what I just said. Like you get to see the facial expressions, the tone, yada, yada. there's this discovery piece.
Oh,
that
so
is
big.
So this is something you say all the time. It's like, well, when's the last time you actually just browsed for a podcast?
Oh, it's so hard.
Yeah.
Like, go on to Apple Podcasts right now. And like the only way that you find a new podcast via that app is this like, oh, either trending now or we think you would like.
Yes.
But when you click on any of them, like, I've never enjoyed them.
No. The discovery algorithm piece is not what we're used to on other social platforms like YouTube or whatever. And so when you add in the video component, so many people so whether it's the full length show or chopping it up into clips, you expose yourself to way more people than you ever would.
Yeah.
Maybe they will never listen to the full length show. Like I was just talking to my friend who he leads his accounting team at his company, and he was saying how I was suggesting that he listen to one of the podcasts we produce here because it's about leadership and different things. And he was like, "Oh man, I've been meaning to do that. I've been watching the clips," and I'm like, "See, he's not listening to the full length thing, but he's being exposed to the ideas because he sees the clips that are being posted on LinkedIn, on YouTube, and these different places."
Well, and there's a whole nother thing to that too, is like the way that the algorithms, my understanding of algorithms for shorts work online is that they have a set number of people that they will test your footage to. And so one of the things that is super interesting is a brand, like when I started my show, the very first clip I posted on YouTube Shorts got 500 views. A brand new show, 500 views on one clip.
Right.
Now, I know in the world of shorts, that's not a ton of views.
Totally.
But that's 500 people on the first time I ever posted anything that got some exposure to my show.
Yep.
There's nothing like that for full length podcasts that doesn't exist
on audio only,
especially audio only, but even full length on video
for sure. Yeah.
Because full length video podcasts are amazing tools, like we've been talking about this whole time. But they don't even have the discovery algorithm.
Not as well. They do on YouTube.
They do,
but not in the same way. And you're not going to get that many views because
views are counted differently. But
and the full length thing is more for the deeper dive, right? Most people aren't going to randomly pick a podcast that they've never listened to before unless they see somebody else that they trust or think is interesting that have been on it.
Yeah. So I mean, if you create 5 clips out of an hour-long show, and on average YouTube shows them to 500 people, they get 500 views per clip. Generally, it's not going to be the same 500 people.
Right.
So that may be 2,500 people that you could not have reached if you did not have those shorts. And 2,500 people who had a chance to learn about and listen to your podcast that would have never before.
Yes, exactly.
And when word of mouth used to be the king in podcasting world, now the king is shorts.
Exactly. Yeah. And that is definitely going to be one of the best ways. And plus it's just like, why not repurpose, right? You already have the content and now there's this platform of social media to like share this kind of thing. And even LinkedIn is getting in on trying to like go deeper into how do we use video for our platform.
Absolutely.
So to kind of land the plane a bit. So, why should you ROI is really attached to the value of your brand. That's how we think about it. And your brand, like, how do you get people to buy from you? Well, you get them to trust you. You showcase why you're trustworthy, and then they will buy from you. How do you get them to show, or how do you show that you're trustworthy? Well, you have to show up regularly, be consistent in that. Also, try to be authentic. Like right now, it's really funny. So like in a lot of the podcasts we talk about here, or we record here, a lot of the conversation is somebody asking a question and then somebody answering. It's a very natural flow. this is us sort of ranting right now. These are our spiels, right? These are our soapboxes, right?
Yeah.
But we're really excited about these things, and so the dynamic might be a little different, but like, you know, we are so about trying to make sure that that's kind of why I'm like saying this a little bit. I'm giving you the insider's peek because I want to be authentic, right?
Mhm.
As much as possible, even though these are like some of the canned things that we say, like we really actually believe these things.
Yes.
And it's very important. And like
Yeah.
we think it's so important that we're producing a whole nother podcast. So Brian has been doing a Cincinnati business podcast, which you should definitely like, share, and subscribe to that. But also
Shameless
like,
plug.
right. But then we want to do this podcast specifically for people who we think could work well with us, because we want to bring you along on the journey.
Mhm.
And so,
or those of you who are just wanting to do your own podcast.
yes,
'Cause-
we actually think this,
Yeah.
what we talk about here, is not just good for people who work with us, but anybody who wants to
Yeah.
podcast.
Because I love to say this, like, not everyone can afford to work with us.
Right.
But $20 a month and a computer is enough to start a podcast nowadays.
Right.
You get a subscription to Riverside,
Yep.
and you can start and grow your own show.
Exactly.
And so the goal of this is, for this show, is for you guys to get practical understandings of why podcasting is good,
Yep.
how to do podcasting well,
Right.
and why it should actually help your brand and hopefully not hurt it.
Exactly.
Because it actually can hurt. It can hurt your brand if you don't
100%.
do it right. But I think the majority of those who get into podcasting understand that and want to make it something that will build and multiply their brand, not
Yes.
hurt it.
Yes.
Don't bankrupt the brand.
Right.
Don't bankrupt the company.
Yes. Yes. And so you want to make sure that as you're trying to not do those things. So again, showing up consistently, trying to be
Mhm.
authentic in how you show up, because people can read the BS from a mile away. And then the other piece is just some things to think about. Again, shameless plug, because we are a video podcast studio, but how are you showing up consistently?
Yeah.
We have friends that's like, man, they pull out their iPhones, they record something, and that's how they're showing up consistently, and that's
Yeah.
great. We think this is just a really great system for creating content. It's not the only system.
No.
We just really like the system. And so figuring out how do you develop a system, a rhythm for creating content, and not just for the sake of creating content. You want to be top of mind for people, right?
Yeah.
You want to kind of show up so that you are people get to know you and understand.
And you're sharing value.
Yes, you're sharing value, you're sharing your insights. Just those things. Show up consistently.
Mhm.
And just like, are you, I think just a sustainable way is what I really want to like hone in on that.
Yeah.
It's like, it's one thing to be like, it's one thing to say, I'm going to start recording a video every day. The social media platforms really love consistency.
They do.
People love consistency.
Yes, they do.
And so those are just two things I'd recommend thinking through. What's my system? Well, what's my system for showing up consistently?
Because if you're a podcast listener, which
Yeah.
we're assuming you are, because
Right.
most people who are interested in podcasting love to listen to podcasts.
And you're listening to this one.
Well, that too. So
Yeah.
if you're a consistent podcast listener, you know the cadence at which your shows come out,
Right.
right? So consistency is a key part
Right.
of retaining and building an audience, which I'm sure we will talk about in later episodes.
Sure.
But it is a huge part. So when you think about this, when you engage in and finally make the plunge and start podcasting for yourself, you need to recognize that this is a long game
Yep.
that has to be consistent.
Yes.
If you're not consistent, you're not going to win.
Exactly.
Not going to win at all.
Right.
And honestly, some versions of consistency aren't going to win very well either.
Yes.
It is very hard for a once a month podcast to grow at the same speed as a once a week podcast.
100%. Yes.
And so that's just always something to think about when you are thinking about, hey, how do I make sure I get the most bang for the amount of time that I get in this process?
Yes. And I think the one last thing I think we could talk about, because the one thing I don't want people to take away from this is that there's no way to measure like how effective podcasting is.
Yeah, it's not true.
That's actually not true. Yeah. While we are saying it's a long game, while we are saying it is very attached to your brand, at least that the way we think about it, there are different things that you can measure along the way. And I'm just going to read a couple. So one of the things is making sure that in your calls to action, in your description, you have unique links. So nobody can actually come from that link unless they've been on your show, right? So figuring out, okay, how do I strategize that a bit? That's something you can measure. There's your LinkedIn SSI, your social selling index.
Yes.
Just Google it and you'll be able to like find yours and
make sure you're logged into LinkedIn.
Yeah, make sure you're logged into LinkedIn first and then you'll get in. But like that's something we've been sort of like low-key gamifying a little bit and trying to like work on. But you know, the more Brian, because of his show, he's been able to post a lot more. And it's been fun to see some of the numbers go up in certain ways and whatever. And so that's another way of showing up and also measuring. Like I have a whole spreadsheet in Notion to kind of track how I'm doing in different ways. My SSI is growing.
And for clarity, the SSI is basically your scorecard on LinkedIn.
Right.
So if you're especially like a B2B style company, having a great score on LinkedIn, a great SSI, will help you show up in more places.
Yes.
So when we talk about that, what we're saying is LinkedIn gives you the capability to see the back end of their algorithm, basically.
Yes.
And say, hey, this is how you're scoring, and here's what you could do to be better and score higher in the algorithm.
Exactly.
So we think podcasting is a great way. I have another friend too who, when I first discovered the SSI, we together were trying to game the system, and he has a podcast.
Yes.
It's been helping him so much as he's been trying to get connections as a business coach, as a leadership coach.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's perfect. And then the last thing is the obvious one, right? Followers, subscribers, downloads, that kind of thing. So those are some things that you can track.
And here's another one.
Track. Yeah.
Here's another one. Obviously, a lot of people do this on websites nowadays, but a lot of smaller companies don't think about this. They don't have a field that says, how have you heard of us, when they do a contact form.
That's true.
And a lot of people, when they have a podcast, will put that as an option, like listen to your podcast.
Yep.
And that is another way where you can track to see is this valuable for me?
Yes.
Is this worth my time? And so we say that those 4 kind of options are some of the best ways you can track the relevance of your show.
Yeah.
Because to be honest, podcasting analytics suck right now.
It's true.
They're really not good,
especially on the audio platforms. But
because
like with YouTube, at least you can like do watch duration.
And Spotify now can do that.
Yes.
Spotify can do that, but most other platforms cannot.
So having other ways of measuring is very helpful. That's a very good point.
Yeah.
So again, just to recap a bit, you know, this is we really believe that the ROI of video podcasting is attached to the value of your brand.
Mm-hmm.
There are certain things you can measure, but this is a long game. And my question is like, are you ready for the long game? Are you ready to develop your reputation over a long period of time? I think like for us, that's very important to us. And we want to be some people who are known as being trustworthy because we are consistent in how we come across, whether it's on camera or off. We want to provide value to our clients. We want to be trustworthy with no matter who comes through our doors. So those are things to think about. And I think if you have any questions about this, if this is interesting to you, if you want to come for a studio tour, we'd love to have you here. Brian and I could talk about this stuff all day. We've already like.
Don't let us talk too much.
What's really funny is this podcast was supposed to be a lot shorter, and we just went to town. I even cut down on notes, so it was great. Hey, if you're getting any value out of this conversation, would you please like, subscribe, rate, review, share this video, do all the things, and get the word out about this podcast. We are really trying to help podcasters like you, brand builders like you, use video podcasts in the best way possible. Thank you so much for your time, attention, and trust, and we will see you next time.